Welcome back here at Washington-Holmes Technical Center right now in our continuing series of the promotion of the plethora of programs available here. Right now with Pat Patillo at the Culinary Center at Patillo's Restaurant, named after Pat. If you've seen the show, and most of you have, you've seen that we've had clips concerning the culinary program over time. We use them as background clips. We use them as part of the general promotion of the Tech Center. This guy's hard to button down. He's he's always busy every time I come around, and which is not a bad thing. But we were able to carve out a little bit of time. So Pat, thanks so much for taking the time today, and I appreciate you sitting down with us.
Well, I appreciate you being here.
The culinary program here at Washington-Holmes Technical Center is sort of multi-pronged. You provide lunches and snacks for the students. You also provide lunches for fraternal organizations such as the Chipley Kiwanis Club, of which I'm a member, and that's how I first met you, how I first became aware of the program. And it's wonderful food. Most people don't realize that your lunches are also open to the public. Let's start at ground zero. Let's talk a little bit about Pat Patillo. Talk a little bit about your history, how you got involved with food, and how you ended up at Washington-Holmes Technical Center.
Well, I always had cooking kind of as a hobby, and you know, had always enjoyed doing it. I went to school, went to Auburn, graduated with a degree in marketing, and still kind of had that desire to cook. I ended up going to work for Morrison's Cafeterias as a manager trainee. I trained in Savannah, Georgia, was transferred to Montgomery, Alabama, where I was assistant manager, and then had several other moves. I ended up in Springfield, Missouri as an assistant manager and was promoted there, and went to Louisville, Kentucky as a manager, and worked in several locations as a manager. Had some family sickness. My father was diagnosed with leukemia, and I felt like I needed to come home. So came home, where I had the opportunity to go to work at the medical center in Dothan. There I oversaw the kitchen. I was food service manager. Worked there for 5.5 years, and while I was there, I was going through the paper and saw where there was an ad for a commercial foods instructor here in Chipley, and that just kind of set me on fire. Wanted to take it to the next level as far as so much getting out of management and going into the teaching end of it. So I talked with Mr. Saunders, came down, did a application, resume, and shortly after that I was the commercial foods instructor here at Washington-Holmes, and that was 26 years ago. So,
my goodness. Now, how many years total with the Morrison's Corporation?
I was with Morrison's for 3.5 years. I went from manager trainee to a manager's position, and really got a lot of good experience at Morrison's. A lot of what I learned at Morrison's I use today, and incorporate that into my training and recipes, and had the opportunity to help open a lot of new cafeterias. At that time, Morrison's was expanding, so I had opportunities to work in Dallas, Texas, Huntington, West Virginia, Evansville, Indiana. The store in Springfield, Missouri was a new cafeteria that I opened as an assistant manager, so had a lot of good experience with Morrison's.
Now, anyone who's been here to Patillo's, who has been able to observe your program, recognizes the fact that you use a real-world scenario here. You are truly getting your students ready for the real world. When it's break time and you have literally hundreds of people from around the campus in line waiting for that sandwich or that meal, they're having to deal with the stress, with the maybe temporary delay in getting the raw ingredients that they need. They're having to deal with all of that real world stuff. That's got to work in their favor, so that, as you pointed out, when they get their first job, they don't end up crying that first day.
Yeah, well, if we're not prepared, it's hard to just turn it off and say, I'm sorry, we've run out of this. We've got to make it happen. And, the key to it, to me, is being prepared. You have to, make decisions based on past history. And, we've done this for a long time, but, we get surprised. Sometimes we get busier than what we anticipated. Sometimes we're slower than, but, you always need to have a plan in the back of your mind. And, that's true both in our morning break and our lunch meal.
Well, I know even just with the fraternal organizations, again, Chipley Kiwanis Club being the most probably the most prolific one here, when we end up with a dozen people, more than we expected, certainly that's a dozen more than what you expected. And I've seen you a time or two, get caught short. In the meantime, we've tried to take care of that problem, and we've now recognized that you can't just open a can, you're preparing full meals. So we've certainly tried to be more sensitive to that. But again, good real-world experience for your students to be able to have to deal with those situations. How many people typically are in the class?
We've gone anywhere from 5 and 6 up. I've had as many as 35. We just do our best to deal with the number of people that we've got. Ideally, I like to have 12 to 15 during a day, and that pretty much gives everyone an opportunity to switch through the different stations in the kitchen, allows me to have a few in the classroom working on paperwork, and it's just not so crowded.
Now, do you have open enrollment in the culinary program?
We do. And our program's a 1,200-hour program. It's broken up into 4 300-hour segments. Our OCPA is just a basic introduction into cooking. The OCPB, it's titled Restaurant Cook, a little bit more involved in cooking. OCPC, chef, head cook, even more responsibility in cooking, trying to build your skills up. And then our OCPD deals more with management. That's where, I'm able to give a lot of hands-on prep, knowledge, safety, sanitation in the kitchen. Our textbook takes it more into the theory part of it, the formulas that a restaurant manager may use in determining food cost, number of plates served, what items are taking up the different proportions in their total food service.
In interviewing other instructors here at the Tech Center, we've learned that huge percentage of the students who successfully graduate, who get a certificate through these programs, are placed. Mm-hmm. Many of these programs, cosmetology being one of them, nearly 100% placement. What is that percentage in your program?
I can't tell you exactly. I would think it's around 90%. One thing, the economy has hurt us. And, one thing I tell my students that having a certificate will get your foot in the door. But, most of the jobs here, you're going to start out at minimum wage or a little bit more. The certificate will get your foot in the door, but then it's up to you to show them what you've got, and then show that you're aggressive and that you're willing to go out of the way to do what you're supposed to do as an employee, and make that better wage. One thing that I've always said is that I think our program is a good basis for people that want to go into management, to get a good overview of the kitchen, good basics of food service, and then use that to go into a management program, to where, that's where I started, was in a management program, and branched out from there. There's so many different opportunities in the food business, food service, sales, equipment. If you want to go into the nutrition end, the sky's the limit there. There's always a demand for dietitians, just regular, hourly positions in a restaurant, flexible schedules, and then of course management, and owners, big money when you start getting into the ownership of even a franchise.
It's certainly better to have started and get these fundamentals,
sure,
instead of just buying a building and deciding you're going to be a restaurateur.
Oh, yeah, yes, because there's so much more involved to it. I have students that come to me and say, "Hey, I want to have my own place," but you're talking about food service equipment that is terribly expensive. Food service grade stove or an oven, you're probably talking minimum $5,000 or $6,000. You could spend an arm and a leg. There's a lot of regulation there. So yeah, there's a lot involved in it, and I would sure recommend. What I've always stressed to my students when they've worked at a place and are talking about leaving. I said, well, get what you can here, because what they're doing, they're making money, and you need to learn at every place you go. And then at some point you can decide on what you want to do, or you may use a blend of what you've learned from other people.
So you can come here and get that basic knowledge. You can also come back here for remedial training.
Oh, yeah.
Young gentleman, Chris, that worked for you last year, used to serve the Chipley Kiwanis Club, got to know him fairly well, got to talk to him. He explained to me that he was on the oil rigs working in the kitchen, found out he could come ashore, get his certificate here with you, go back to that same job and make significantly more money because he was certified at that point.
Exactly. And that's one thing that we offer with our students that are dedicated and, come to class wanting to learn. We've been able to help them with the certification so they can leave here certified.
Your program, exactly like many of the other programs here at the Tech Center, a heritage program, been around a lot of years, has turned out a lot of people some who maybe still work in the restaurant industry, some who use that knowledge nonetheless every day in some fashion. How many people, ballpark, do you think have gone through your program in that 20-something years since you've been an instructor?
Several thousand.
Well, I've been able to spend some time around here, kind of lurking around. I know that for a few weeks, every time you looked up, I had a camera going. But we were able to capture some of your people in action. They might have just been making a salad, or they might have been putting the strawberries on top of a shortcake, or they might have been out on the line serving, dealing with real-world customers, because that guy, when he plops his money down, he expects that sandwich or that plate of food, he expects it to be right. I've seen your students deal with everything from opening a can and cutting up food, preparing food, to dealing with that customer.
Oh, yeah.
Would you say that's a fair range of what you offer here from one end to the other?
Yeah, we're basically a hands-on program. I love it now that we have mainly full-time students. We used to have some half-time students, and that's good too, but it's nothing like being able to come in here in the morning and see our process start from the beginning, go through the food prep, the service, and then the cleanup. And, some people don't like the cleanup so much, but who wants to be around a dirty kitchen? So that's a priority with us. And
it's obvious your kitchen is spotless, and obviously you would hope to expect that in a teaching environment, but nonetheless it is. One thing that was very apparent to us is the respect, that high degree of respect that your students exhibit for you. Now, they may go home and say something else behind your back, but they're paying attention and they are very respectful. I would imagine that the qualifying process, the interview, the pre-interview before they start a program, probably part of that, so where you find out why they're there, if they're there for the right reasons, and if they're going to be accepted into the program. Would that be fair to say?
Well, I appreciate the respect that I get, but I also try to respect my students. And, occasionally we have to deal with situations that come up, but by and far, my students are reasonable. That allows me to be reasonable, and, we can conduct what has to be done pretty much on an adult type level. And, we cut up and carry on sometimes, but we're still very serious about what we do.
And rightfully so. You're putting a guy out there who's going to be dealing with food. What can be more important than preparing food and putting it in front of somebody who's going to ingest that food, especially with all of the issues we have health-wise today, foodborne diseases and so forth. Heck, it's bad enough dealing with the produce that's coming in without proper preparation. One thing, as I pointed out at the beginning, that people are not aware of is that your lunchroom is actually open to the public, so that if were somebody of a mind to come in, visit your campus, they could actually enjoy lunch with you.
Oh, yeah. Well, we are feeding faculty, staff, and students, so we ask that individuals that do come in at lunch to come in, and we say around 11:30. That gives us time to feed our people. They're coming in, getting a lunch, and they've got to be back in class, whether it's a student having to be back in class or the instructor having to be back in class. But, we've got a half an hour between 11:30 and 12 where we're not quite as busy, and, days vary, but we're not quite as busy. Then at 12 o'clock, our people from LRC come over and we feed them. So have got several regulars from the community that come, and we appreciate them because we're not really here to make money, but you know, it's good that we have enough volume that we can make enough for it to be worthwhile. We wouldn't want to feed 10 or 12 people. We like feeding 75 or 80 people.
Several times I've seen Wayne Saunders and his wife Carolyn. Wayne, longtime director of the program out here. To this day, he still eats with you.
Oh, yeah.
What better show of buy-in is that?
Yeah. Well, you know, we've got some instructors that I see more now. They come to eat when they're retired versus when they were here, you know, which I can understand being so busy and all. But Mr. and Ms. Ralph Ray, you know, I see Mr. Ray a lot more now that he's retired than when he was here. But, you know, all of us have our hands full when we're here teaching.
Well, you're putting out fires, and sometimes you don't get that lunch period necessarily. Yeah. One day I was back in the line, and you were helping out some students and doing some instructing, and I looked up at the price board, and you saw me looking at it, and you looked at me and you said, you know, we don't do this to make a profit. The prices are phenomenal, and like you point out, as long as you cover your cost, but truly a bargain. Well,
you know, and that's, I've always said that we're a benefit for a lot of people. For some people we aren't, but, you know, that's kind of been my philosophy. You know, I've got to make enough money to cover my expenses, and then to have a little extra to buy stuff, you know, and take care of repairs and that kind of thing. But we truly, you know, try to make it a benefit. And, you know, as far as students, you know, I know that we've got some that, you know, probably don't have a whole lot, you know, to eat with. And, you know, I always try to have items on our menu that, you know, to fill every need that's out there.
Found out just recently that you're soon to be retiring after 26 years, did you say?
Well, I've got 24 years here, and I was food service director for 2 years at Sunland. So I've got 26 years with the state.
It's got to happen at some time. Everybody realizes that. To a person, everyone that I've spoken to about that expresses dismay. Yeah. No program revolves around a single person, and hopefully they're going to have somebody that will step in. But that's going to be quite a change. If for that many years you're the guy at the helm, have they got any prospects now of in a search for your replacement?
Well, I've just talked with Ms. Compton about it. I'm not really sure what they're doing there, but like you say, it's going to be I know it'll be a big change for me because this has been my life for that many years, and you know, it's just had the opportunity to go. My wife's retiring, and you know, we've got some things that we'd like to do.
And good for you to be able to take advantage of that. Many people wait too long and then they never get that opportunity. Martha Compton, as you point out, currently the director of the Washington-Holmes Technical Center. When I asked her how advisable it would be to interview despite the fact that you were soon leaving, she said, oh, absolutely. We want to let Pat know how important he is to the program, but more importantly, we want to get on record, you know, in your own words, what you've done. What's been the best, most rewarding part of being the head of this program here, Pat?
Just the success stories that I've had, you know, the students, like you say, the respect that I've had from the students, and, you know when people are genuine and when they aren't, and I've really had a lot of genuine students, and, you know, you care so much for, I mean, I'm with my students more than I am with my wife, and you can't help but care and be concerned for your students, their welfare, you know, the troubles that they might have. Yeah, I mean, you get involved in that, but, you know, it's just like a family. You know, a lot of times at lunch, we'll sit down at one table, and, you know, we may have had some stressful moments during the meal, but we can sit down at the table and talk like we're just one big family. And Ms. Stevenson, you know, everyone talks about me, but, you know, a lot of my success has been from Ms. Stevenson, and you know, her assistants. You know, we worked together as a team. She was a former student, and, you know, I at one time had an assistant, and she retired, and then I had it for a while without an assistant. And when the chuck wagon burned down, that's when I picked up the Kiwanis Club. And, you know, to run an operation like this by yourself, it's kind of hard. And a part of the deal in taking the Kiwanis Club was that I could get some help. And I had Miss Potter in mind, you know, if she was able to go through the interview process and all, which I had no doubt. But, you know, that has really helped me, we know what each other's thinking, and on days when I've got several people out, she's able to help me, get the stuff done, because I can't hang a sign up and say, not open today. I've got two or three students out sick. We just don't have enough to operate. So a lot of my success I attribute to her, and she's just a godsend, and really good with the computer. She's got the computer skills that I don't have, so that's a big help for me too.
What have been some of your bigger challenges in this position over the years?
Well, we have accountability, and we've got to, of the number of students that we have to graduate a certain amount. A certain percentage have to be industry certified, and certain students have to be, a certain number have to be employed. Now, that's probably one of the bigger challenges, because you get students with different desires. Some students come just for their own personal benefit, just to cook, and they don't really have any desire to go out and be employed. So, but then I think the state is seeing where there are some individuals like that, so they aren't holding that quite as rigid accountabilities and all. We're inspected by the health inspector. That's always a concern of mine, to have the kitchen looking good. So when the health inspector comes in, we have maybe one or two areas, and when you look at the whole kitchen and the cleanliness, if you can only have one or two items pointed out, I think you're really doing good. That's something that you don't ever get caught up on. That's an everyday chore of keeping your kitchen clean. So, that's a challenge. But, all in all, I love doing this, and as I've told many people, I'd rather be doing it here than anywhere else.
Pat, you point out this is a 1,200-hour class. How long does that physically take somebody to do? Well,
a full-time student is a little over a year, and fortunately, we've been able to operate during the summers the whole time that I've been here. So, just a little over a year for a full-time student.
All education has been impacted to some extent by the economy, by the heartburn we're feeling right now. Not long ago, Governor Rick Scott sat right here against this wall, as a matter of fact, had a little roundtable discussion with local business people. One of the questions I asked him is, what is the state doing to ensure that we are providing education that will truly provide jobs? 35% of the kids right now graduating college are going back home to live with mom and dad and can't find a job. When I pointed that out to him, he said, his daughter had just graduated with an anthropology degree from the University of Florida and had just come home to live because she couldn't find a job. Wow. What better way to get that point across? But he has pointed out that the state does have a fine eye on these sort of technical centers, on the welding and the carpentry and the electricians and the culinary and the cosmetology, all of the programs. Right now, Eastern Shipyards in Panama City needs 50 welders, the way I understand it. Now, right across our parking lot here, we've got a welding class turning out welders.
Right.
Certainly, there's not going to be any less demand for food preparation, for servers, for management for restaurants. So your program as well fitting well into that scheme. As you point out, if you don't have enough students, if you don't have enough students graduating, if you don't have enough students graduating who then get employment, all of those things in a point system, well, your program will go away.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The Tech Center is opening up several new programs just this year. Internet technology, cybersecurity, digital audio video production, lots of cutting edge computer-based programming. Yours is a very nuts and bolts program. Cooking, culinary, best culinary practices, none of that's changed in the last 100 years. What's right is what's right.
Right. And, that's one thing. The equipment doesn't change a lot. Of course, the advent of the computers, that's helped a little bit as far as, say, like a waitress, waiter type thing, and ringing up orders, keeping up with orders, that kind of thing. But basically, I'm still using some of the equipment in the kitchen that I started out with 26 years ago.
If you're making a gravy, if you're cutting up vegetables for a salad, if you're making a strawberry shortcake, it is what it is. It's not computerized. At the end of the day, you want a presentable product that you're going to be proud of. And again, that dates back to even prior to you starting your teaching career.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And, you know, one thing that we try to do, you know, I go to a variety of sources to get recipes. You know, I have a world of just church cookbooks that, you know, have been put out by the local churches. And, you know, we'll take a recipe and, you know, I'll get that recipe and hand it to a student and I'll say, you know, this will feed 4. Why don't you times this by 15 and let's see what we can do? You know, that'll give me servings for 60. And, you know, in that I'm feeding a captive audience, you know, I'm always trying to change up the things that we do, you know, always trying to add a little spice to what we do.
Well, in the case of the Chipley Kiwanis Club, we eat here 40-something times a year, every Tuesday, and that is one thing I have to point out. After 5 years myself being a Kiwanian here in Chipley, the food is not just good. There's a lot of variety, but more importantly, there's some good dishes, and you do repeat those. So, you know, I'm kind of we're all creatures of habit, I think, but you make some signature dishes, which I like particularly, and I walk in the door, I can tell, I smell it, I see it up there. Yeah. So it's like coming home. And I think food has that ability. It puts you in that frame of mind that you are coming home, no matter where you are. So food provides more than just sustenance. It provides more than just the ability for us to have the strength to get up and do what we need to do every day. It actually provides, the term comfort food, for instance. There's a lot to be said for a good meal. Oh, yeah, yeah. And not only that, this gives my students an opportunity. You know, I can make it easy on myself to have like a 4 or 6 week cycle menu that, you know, every 4 to 6 weeks, you know, we had the same thing. But, you know, I work on menus daily, weekly, and you know, I can't tell you what I'm going to have next week, but you know, I may see a spark in a student that, hey, or even a student may suggest to me, why don't we do this? And you know, let me point out that I learn from my students every day. You know, I don't know it all, never pretended to know it all, and you know, especially Chris, the young man that had some food service experience. You know, I learned things from him, and you know, so I always have my eyes open to, hey, you know, what can I learn today? But you know, this gives my students an opportunity to deal with a variety of desserts, a variety of salads, different meats. You know, we do seafoods, chickens, beef. You know, you name it, we try to do it. And the only restraint there is cost. You know, I can't really get into costly dishes. I know when I first started talking about the home style food, you know, I had some real exotic recipes and tried to do some real fancy things, but I found that people by and far, you know, enjoyed the good home style cooking versus, you know, that kicked up cooking. And there's a place for that, but, and you know, occasionally we do go there, but as far as, you know, everyday stuff, you know, we try to keep it simple, but keep it good. Well, thank you, first of all, for taking the time today. I appreciate you sitting with us here for a few minutes. More importantly, thanks for what you've brought to the community, to Washington-Holmes Technical Center. We're going to miss you, certainly. Hopefully, you're still going to be around in the area, and hopefully you'll be able to still stop in with to say hello to your students.
Well, I sure hope to. Maybe I'll be a part of the advisory committee. You know, I hope to not go to work for a while after retiring. You know, maybe I'll get a belly full of fishing and hunting, and then, you know, maybe go to work. But maybe I can be some help to whoever has the program afterwards, and maybe give them some guidance and how to do.
Well, and shame on them if they don't take advantage of that wealth of knowledge that you've been able to acquire. And the best of luck on getting some of that hunting and fishing in. Enjoy your retirement. And again, thank you for everything that you've brought to Washington-Holmes Technical Center over the years. I've enjoyed just the short time that I've known you. So best of luck, and thanks again.
Well, it's been my pleasure. This is like a second home to me.
I understand. You're watching Real Florida Magazine, here today with Pat Patillo. We're in Patillo's restaurant, part of the Washington-Holmes Technical Center Culinary Program. Check it out. If you're in the Chipley area, sometime after 11:30, stop by for lunch. But stop into the Student Center, get a catalog if you're interested in some remedial education, if you're interested in maybe just personal enrichment, if you've just always wanted to learn something about a subject, don't necessarily want to go out and get a job in that field, certainly the place to come. You're watching Real Florida Magazine, and we'll be right back.